Deb, we didn't quite hear that. It didn't get picked up.
Ah.
Do you want to just do that again?
Okay. I think it's because I'm blowing away from the mic.
I don't know.
Let's do it this way. Get that?
Yeah, I heard it in Switzerland, in the Alps.
Yeah, feels like home.
Hills are alive.
And I'm just gonna put a smudge on. Whoever has smudge handy and wants to join me, feel free.
Thank you, sister. We didn't hear it once again, not all of it anyway, but that doesn't matter. Would anyone like to do the pule, the prayer, or shall I do it? I'll do it. So just to invite you to come into this space however you are. And I'm going to say a short prayer to bring us into the correct alignment. And after I finish with it, I'd just like us to take a few breaths in a moment, just to be with the sensation or the essence of being in the presence and the experience of being with the ancestors at this time. Na akua, na aumakua, na paikahiko, aloha, mahalo. Aloha kako, aloha ka ua, aloha mai. E molokai nui ahina, e papahana moku. E na kupuna o garigu, aloha, mahalo. Aloha na akua, mahalo na akua. We thank you, Nakua, for your time here with us in this evening as we come together once again in the guide room with you. And we ask you to surround us with your aloha, your unconditional love, and your protection from the kolohe and the kepalo, who are always seeking to disrupt and disturb. And we know that they are present in each realm of existence. We ask you, Nakua, to extend this aloha out to all beings of the cosmos and all those in need, in whatever form or shape they may take. That all those who need the experience of aloha, to feel the connection with aloha, so that they don't feel isolated or alone at this time, and that they remember that the ancestors and the aumakua, their personal guides and guardians, are always with them and always watching over them, and that they only have to extend out their thought from their heart in a prayer, a song, a movement, and those ancestors will respond to them. We ask you, Na'akua, at this time to guide this conversation as we come together. And also, Na'akua, we recognize the First Nations people on these countries, the lands of the countries that we all sit in. And we recognize them, the past, the present, and the emerging. traditional owners and custodians of this land. Now, Kua, we send you our puli, our prayer today, and we send it to you with these words that you've taught to us for 51 generations. E amama, e amama, e amama. Let it fly. Mahalo na Kua. And just take a deep breath in and let that out. Mahalo for that connection, that time. Beautiful. I don't know about you, but I really felt that whole protocol. It was lovely. Lovely. Thank you, everyone. So good evening. Tonight's conversation, as I said earlier, is the guide room. So in the guide room is doing your inner work or not. We're going to be speaking for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll take any questions. Either you can join us live here in the guide room and Zoom. The details are in the event, or you can chat via Facebook. Take it away, Deb.
Yes. So doing your inner work, brackets or not. I know sometimes I wish I wasn't doing inner work. So I looked up, because I love looking at dictionary terms for things, because that starts a conversation in itself. And I was like, right, what's the definition of inner work? And it says the parts of something that are only known by the people who work on it. Just like if you were a machine, and I found that there wasn't quite a human definition or description for inner work. I found that quite interesting. And what the other thing about that, what made me smile is that the words are only known by the people who work on it. And I know when I'm working on my inner work, it feels like everybody knows I'm working on my inner work. You know what I mean? Most, yeah, because you feel so, I guess, so exposed. So some of the areas I thought about that people may relate to when looking to do their inner work. So it's things, when would you embark on doing your inner work? So things like finding yourself in a pattern. Oh, I'm here again. I'm the common denominator. Whether you are or whether you aren't, you're experiencing the pattern. You actually get to be self-judging, which leads to, or could lead to, self-hate. There is parts of you that is just wanting to explore more, like a longing to wake up, like be aware of more things. There is usually lots of hurt going on when you're doing your inner work. You're trying to get to and grasp to a level of hurt and to get over that hurt, to understand that hurt, which leads us into the forgiveness conversation. This will probably also things like feeling lonely, feeling alone, feeling very disengaged, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, and all of these different what are called symptoms are usually directions, signposts that are saying, let's get some inner work done. And that inner work can come in many different ways, short or long periods of time. I know for me, I was doing inner work when I didn't realize I was doing inner work. And then I only committed to it for a short piece of time because I used to tick the box. Oh yeah, I've done that. Tick, next. Where when I realized, for me, because we're unique, what I realized was that ticking of the box was part of my inner work anyway, right? It's not a box tick, it's a living of something that you've wanted to change. And you wanted to change in all aspects of yourself. So I'd like to hear about the wise guys about what they think is the definition of inner work and how they would describe doing inner work.
Can I just ask you too, Deb, can you sit a little bit closer to your microphone because you're fading out a little bit?
Okay. Sure. Is that better?
Bit better.
I could talk louder.
Hey, that might be a good idea.
Yeah. Does anybody got any thoughts on the inner work?
I think about my journey within inner work. I think for many, many years of my life, I was asleep. I was a human doing. And it was only when I had some significant traumatic life events that I realized the way I was approaching life was not serving me. And I made some major changes and made some active choices to start working on myself. If I think about inner work for me now, it's as natural as waking up and washing your face or brushing your teeth. I don't experience it for me now. I don't experience it as a ticking the box. It is something that is actually intrinsic and part of my life. It is a journey I have committed to, and it can be expletive at times. And there are times when I'm excruciatingly frustrated at myself. But I know it's always in my hands. How I feel is always in my hands. So I'm doing my inner work all the time in different levels. Sometimes I'm more consciously engaged. Sometimes I do my inner work because I have a conversation with a friend and they reflect something back at me that I then kind of go, ah. Or I find myself I love this one, I find myself helping others and coaching others and giving them advice. And you know what? I'm not taking my own freaking advice. So for me, it's a commitment. It is my life. Every interaction, there's always an observer. I'm always there observing. Not always intensely. Sure, I let myself off and I have a few wines and have a good time and do things and say things I shouldn't have, and then I look back and go, it's not my finest hour. But yeah, for me, it's no longer a tick a box. It's just what I do. Commitment.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it is definitely something that is walking with you on a daily basis, and it's, I mean, the name itself would be quite a giveaway what the work is all about, really, because it's nothing of it happens on the outside. You know, there's triggers on the outside, but it all is a process within. So I guess looking at the world as well, that we are all students and teachers to each other. You know, somebody might say something or do something, and it might bring a reaction in you, whatever that reaction is. It might be anger, it might be shame, it might be fear, it might be feeling of not being worthy, like all of these kind of our little demons that lurk in the shadows. And it would be quite easy to say he or she did this to me, but it is like you said, Christina, it's always something that is happening within us. So if I feel that shame, where is that shame born from? You know, where is that coming from? What happened in my life that I feel that shame? You know, where else does that shame thread itself through? And that's just an example. That's with any kind of trigger that is. And the most difficult part in all of that is ownership, you know, owning your shit, and not projecting it onto others. And in the same then, but also being clear about or becoming clear, because it's all a process, for me at least. You know, it's like in the first moment I might break that way, and then it processes, and then I might have a different side on it, and then it processes, and then I might look at it completely different again, and it processes. So whenever I get into that state where something really triggers me strongly, I try to not act at that moment, because for me it is a process until I sit at a space where I can speak my truth without being from a place that is charged.
I think that's a really important point you make, B, in terms of that time and that process and that assimilation.
Yeah.
When something happens in the first instance, it's really easy to just go, something rises up in you. And then as you get time to reflect on that and work through that, and they say time heals all. And I find at times that, like you said, there are things that happen, and that in that day you really wound up and it really affects you. But you sleep on it or you ponder it, and the next day it doesn't feel quite as charged, perhaps.
For me, it always helps well to really lean into it. Like something just happened over the last couple of days that really triggered me, and so whenever I found a bit of space, and ideally for me it is somewhere outside, I sit with it and I try to lean into it as much as you can. You know, it is sometimes excruciating and really uncomfortable and painful and all of these feelings, but you don't have to do anything else. Just slightly, ever so slightly lean into it as far and as much as you can, and then come out again. But just keep on leaning into it. And often you don't have to do much more than just allowing that really to sit with you and process, and then it itself is transformative, I find. And then there's many times when you need a friend or when you need a professional to help you through certain places. But that's definitely a start, is to just be with it and sit with it. And
it's that acknowledgement piece, isn't it? It's acknowledging it and not stepping away. It's, as you said so beautifully, to lean into it.
Yeah.
Because the more, I think for many of us who are on this journey, it's really our instinctive reaction is to step away, to hide, to ignore, to blame somebody else. And the brave part, and actually the freeing part, it's so contradictory, you know, to hear you say you step into it and it's easier. That's my experience. And there's a lot of scientific analysis around processing emotions. The more we step in, the more we acknowledge, the more we feel it, the easier that transformative process is. But I think for many of us, the instinctive reaction is, that scares me, or it's all their fault. It's not it's not about me. It's them. They're the evil one. I'm the angel here.
Or is it, and exactly that, I'm loving this, because I found for number one, I had to be taught how to lean into something.
It's hard. It's not easy, right?
I had to be taught that. I had to work with somebody that was willing to hold that space for me. Like, trust is a huge thing when I'm doing my inner work. Really have to trust somebody to be, like I said, holding that space and walking with me, like walk with me. All of those triggers, but I found how amazing I am at avoidance.
We all are, yeah.
I write a book on telling you how to avoid leaning into something, and it's, oh no, it's okay, I've done something, and it's all of those things. Like reaction for me is a huge one, and I sometimes mean, well, a lot of the times I mean a reaction internally that may not even get to be external, seen or felt by somebody else. But if I'm reacting and I can feel my reaction, whether it's a feeling, physical feeling, whether it's my mind, whether it's self-talk going on, all the self-sabotaging behaviors you have in your internal voice, and then how that spirals. That for me is always an indicator. Always an indicator. But I'm wondering, is there methods that you would say, how does somebody know that they need to do inner work? One, and secondly, how would they embark on doing that inner work?
You know when you need to do the work. I think there's a couple of issues. One is knowing, and the other is being ready. I wasn't ready for a long time. Others saw I needed to do inner work. I didn't. So you need to be ready. And for me, it was when life became so painful.
Yeah.
My relationships, or the way I was in the world, was causing me so much pain. And that's normal. You know, people only change when people only change when they're in pain. And that was the trigger for me. I had a horrific relationship, a horrific marriage that went very, very wrong. He was perfect for me because he forced me to look at myself and do my work. So I'm grateful that he came into my life, because it was so excruciatingly painful that I had no choice. Then I was ready.
Yeah, it seems to often be the case that some sort of crisis leads people, you know, to explore different avenues. It's like in Chinese, in the Chinese word for crisis, I think has two meanings, like danger and opportunity. And to me, that always sits like that, because if you are in a crisis, it can go both ways. And I think often you don't know that you have shit to work on, you know, because you're very good in avoiding it, or not seeing it, or you're so conditioned to certain things that it is really difficult to see beyond that. And I think it's really important as well that we have compassion for ourselves in that, and for others as well. You know, it's yeah, it can be really, really uncomfortable and painful. And in that moment when all that shit surfaces, you know, you can completely be washed away in that feeling of I'm not worth it. You know, in that moment, all of you feels like you are so unworthy when you go through that process. But it's a process, you know, you always have to remember it's part of it. But every time I enter into bigger spaces again, it feels like scary at times.
Because all of us here have powerfully chosen to do inner work. We've made that choice, right? It is a life choice. When was it that you each made that choice? Did you always know? Were you always there doing your inner work from a young age, or was there a crisis of some sort where you went, actually it's time, there's got to be more, I'm screwing up my life, or I'm unhappy, or I'm in pain, it's now time?
I think I would say I was not conscious making decisions. I think I was spiritually drawn without even being aware, right? So I was like, how did I get here? And there was all goodness in that. But my avoidance tactics were stronger. So I avoided a lot for a long time. I think the realization I'll call my turning point was the realization how unhappy I was. And I was unhappy with people around me. When I sat with myself, I actually was very unhappy with myself. And that realization is not a pretty one, because there is no choice.
Correct.
There's nowhere to go. Or do you stay with the realization that you're really unhappy? No, that's not a choice. The decision is. And to be able to define happy as well. right? So, but that's inner work.
It is. It is. What about you, B?
I was just thinking I think I was always a little bit, I always felt like a bit different in my family and you know, and I grew up in a wonderful family and still have wonderful friends at home. You know, when I come home, even though it sometimes was 7-10 years that I didn't make it home, we get together and it's like I never left. But I was always a bit different, you know, like I spoke about energies and things that at that time, back then, 30-40 years ago, was maybe even crazy or quite out there. But I was laughed for my craziness, but nobody quite understood or got it, and I didn't get it either. And it was then, I think, when we started our studies that, well, I studied at Earth Institute before, and that came through a crisis, not Earth Institute, Nature Care. And that came through a crisis. And so I started doing counseling there. And it just didn't quite satisfy a different level, like a deeper level of it. And that's when I came across the diploma that we did together. And even then, like for 2 years, it was really like intense, you know, work we had to do on each other in the process. But still, I avoided the one-on-one sessions. And I had good excuses, you know, I didn't have the money and I didn't have the time. And all of that was true. I just gave birth to my second child and we had a small business, you know, and $150 an hour. It was a lot of money. So all of that was true, and it was avoidance in all of that as well. And I think it was at the end of when we were about to get our diploma, I remember my teacher saying to me that I won't get the diploma until I had done at least 10 single sessions. And all of a sudden, you know, it somehow worked out with the money as well and everything. And I never looked back. You know, I'm still so grateful to both of them because it changed my life completely. And what was scary at first later became a treat. You know, for my birthday, I would treat myself with a session. So because the rewards of setting yourself free is, yeah, you can't describe it in words. The peace and the yeah, there's really no words.
It's peace, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pure, it's the feeling of pure peace.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Yeah.
And therefore that ripples out.
And a growth of self-love that comes through the process. And that, I guess, goes hand in hand with the peace, because you start just loving yourself because you have gone with yourself through all these dark places and come out on the other side, you know, and the loneliness. So, you know, when you claim these parts back of yourself, you start realizing that loneliness was a yearning for your own, for parts of yourself that had split up or that you had forgotten or packed away. Or it's really difficult to explain in words but
You've done a great job, B.
Yeah.
all of us, yeah.
I think too, when you've gone through that process, it doesn't mean you're not going to go through the process again.
Nah, you really go again and again. Yeah.
Through that process, but there's more. The more you lean in, the easier. The more you trust you're going to come out the other end.
Yeah.
And the easier the process is. So initially, you're terrified. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff and you're just going to jump off the cliff and you don't have a parachute and you have nothing and you've got no idea where you're going to land. And there's absolute sheer terror. And then you realize, actually, that was all right. You know, it was a bit bumpy. Didn't like all of it, but I'm out of it now. It's like, oh, that's all right. And then the universe has a way, and we've always got so much work to do on ourselves. You think you've conquered one thing and then life throws you something else and you've got to deal with a similar issue from a different perspective, or it's a different situation. So you're always doing your work. But I find that I'm less afraid to lean in now because I trust the process more. And the bizarre thing is the process has no logic. You can't actually deal with the process with your rational mind. So any of you listening who are trying to deal with this with your rational mind, forget it, because this doesn't play out in the rational mind. This plays out somewhere else.
Yeah, you're not a book. You're not the textbook. You can't follow the textbook.
You can't follow if you just do A, B, C, D, E, and F, you'll come out the other side. Silver bullet, you're on your way. Gold star, top of the class. It works. It's just how it works.
And what I love about doing in the inner work, I call it my toolkit, right? Because as soon it's not as soon as you break through something, but you realize that every part of that working process becomes your toolkit. And I find, and you said it's less terror leaning into a feeling or emotion, or what I find now is that I have a reaction, and it's almost like a comedy act. I go,
It's you.
That one. Yes, and yeah, so it's I love the fact that the tools that you pick up for doing it in a work without question.
Yeah, and they're different for everybody. I mean, and that's the beauty of this work, is that processes and things and techniques that work for some people don't work for others, and vice versa. And
or don't work at a certain time, but work all of a sudden 2 years later, then, and yeah.
Or you're not ready at one time, you need something else. Sometimes you need something more gentle. Other times you just need someone to whack you over the head.
Yeah.
And it's about knowing, or about the people that are working with you too, to know what's needed at the time.
And I think it's also important to mention that it can take a bit of time to find that person that really gets you. And it's so important that somebody really gets you and can hold you in that space. And if that means that there's nothing wrong with going and seeing somebody and going, doesn't feel quite right to me, and seeing somebody else, it might take a few tries before you find that one person where you go, yeah, that really felt like I was getting somewhere. So there's nothing wrong with trying different practitioners and
different modalities.
Yeah, exactly.
I've worked with some modalities and I was wedded to those modalities and I thought they were great and I was getting great process. And then I hit a wall, and no matter, I knew my physical pain was emotional. I knew what I was going through, but the modality I was working with just didn't take me where I needed to go. And then I found a new modality that was just that key that unlocked that missing piece for me. And then all of a sudden, whooshka, I was away. It was transformative.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I think there is nothing more painful for myself, but also when experiencing others, when they're in that desperation point with themselves, don't know where to turn. It's getting angry. It's got the reactions, and again, it's for myself because I've been there, and no doubt I will probably get there again, right? Just not today. But when you experience, when you experience somebody's pain and they don't know what to do with it, I think there is absolutely nothing worse in the world than experiencing somebody else's pain and they're not asking for the help to take it further. And I find a lot of people find themselves stuck in that mode, not realizing that they're their fixers. You fix yourself by taking the step towards healing and doing something. And I find that really, really painful. For me, I find that really painful to experience somebody else being in so much pain, because I know you don't have to be there.
But then that's about you.
But that's
Because
about,
that's how you, that's your, what you've just named then is your inner work.
that's my inner work. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's all around boundaries, and that's all around knowing what's yours and what's somebody else. And that, friends, is where the inner work comes in, because what happens in life is that things can get very entangled when your foundation isn't what we call in our lineage, we have a word for it, it's called being pa'a, strong, firm and unshakable. So if you are not in that place, then every aspect of your life will always be unstable, because you're the common denominator in your life. It doesn't matter. Life's a web of relationships. It's relational, and you can't be relational from while you're sliding down the slope. You can, but it will not be healthy.
No.
And, you know, going to your points before about talking about therapy, you know, having a companion and reaching out to a therapist or a helper of some kind, any good therapist knows that, you know, a client, especially when you meet them for the first time, you know, a client's going to kiss a lot of frogs usually before they get to the right one. That's certainly my own experience. And I say that to my own clients and to new people I meet, you know, and I've said over and over again to people, I am not the right therapist for you, so-and-so is. And they will want to grip onto me simply because I've been honest with that.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it takes me sometimes a little while for people to go say to me, you know what, you're right, you're not the right therapist for me. And I think, great, I know, I've done the first part of my job. That is the job of a therapist. Every therapist also knows that their job is not to hold on to you, but for you to get out there in the world on your own with the skills to find your way through life. And any therapist that wants to keep you dependent on them, doesn't matter what modality, you know, whether it's from, you know, it's from Reiki to Bowen to massage therapy to astrology, you know, I could just, you know, get out the shopping list. You know, anyone that tries to keep you dependent on them, you know, they are not working in your interest, because then what happens? It's about them, not about you. And the reason, going back to what I just said about to Deborah, you know, that making that about, you know, that's where her inner work is, that's where all our inner work is. You know, we have to know when we're on that slippery slope. We have to learn to hear it as we're speaking it, and not only hear it, you know, orally, but to hear it in our bodies, so that then we know where to go next, you know. When we're on, I always know when I'm on shaky ground. I can feel it. It comes up through my body like a vibration. And I think, okay, where am I? What am I doing? You know, it goes back to that conversation a few times ago where we were talking about the seeds of our living. And I know as soon as I feel that, one of those or more is being activated in some way, you know, and it goes back to, you know, that's the power, you know, that's my power base. That's the place that I come from, you know, and that's the place that I hold the inquiry from. And I think that's the value of doing inner work, is because eventually we all get to that point, you know, of knowing. And, you know, we're taught, like with our teacher, not to say, you know, if we say, oh, I think it's so-and-so, he just completely loses it. Because we're taught to absolutely know. And Deborah, you know, Deborah and I have sat with our teacher, you know, when we haven't known, and, you know, we have to get to that point of knowing. And you can only get to that point of knowing because your foundation is pa'a, it's strong, and you're continually doing the work to understand what's getting in the way here. What's getting in the way of my progress? You know, where am I out of alignment? What's taking me over there? What do I need when I'm there? Do I like that or not? If I don't like it, what am I going to do to get back over here? And you know what? I quite like doing my inner work, not because I'm into navel gazing, but do you know why I like it? Because I feel so close to the ancestors. In my heart of hearts, I feel this is where, you know, this is life in that space. And then, and the trick is to be able to go, well, if that's for me, if that's, you know, I love my life, I love being there, I love that engagement with them. How do I bring that into my physical experience? That's to me what for myself, that's what my inner work is all about these days.
And that's the thing, it's not just, you know, it's like on the medicine wheel, it's the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the spiritual aspect, and the emotional aspect, and to take care of all of these parts as you engage in the work. Like what you just described is very spiritual, you know, you're connected to the ancestors and all of that, and I feel that in different ways, but I know exactly what you mean by that, you know.
Because we can't, because in our teachings, right, you know, the alignment is spirit, mind, body, not mind, body, spirit as we hear it. You know, for us, our training and everything that we're about comes, if we don't have spiritual alignment, we have no alignment.
Something's missing.
Because if you're trying to come from mind, I can't even say, I don't even know how you say it these days. Mind, body, spirit, then mind is always going to be entangled, because, you know, it's always going to be at the mercy of, you know, the ego, where the spirit is also always going to be pure. It's always going to be the truth of us is there.
And I just want to acknowledge we just had a comment on Facebook to say that Julia, that so resonates right now.
Thank you.
So yeah, touching the spot, so to speak.
And I just want to, I know I'm terrible. I'm supposed to be the timekeeper. So we've been talking for about 40 minutes now. So I'm just letting everybody know that.
And we've got another comment. I love this. So
so where does that take us?
Here, yeah.
You know, really, because you know, I sat and listened to all of you engaging and speaking, and you know, and I'm thinking, gosh, I feel like I'm you know, a kid with 1,000 strings of balloons here, you know, like I could just pick anyone to go with. But I think, you know, when you've been doing your inner work for a long time, it's really easy to use words and language that other people may not understand. So, you know, if someone said, you know, someone came from Mars at this moment and said, what do you mean I've just got to sit with that? Like, what does that mean, really? And what does lean into mean? Like, what does it look like? And I think that's kind of a good way to sort of bring a few threads here. Like, what does sitting with it actually mean? Because truthfully, I've never really known it myself. Well, I think I do it, but I don't know what I'm doing.
I've literally done it. I've literally sat down with it being, I've got to call the it, right? Being a feeling, an overwhelming feeling or emotion, or a realization from a circumstance that has caused some distress within me, something not right. I've done the literal sit with it.
But what is it? What is the sitting? What is the sitting?
Just it's contemplating, and like what's going on. It's just saying what's going on for me. I feel this anger.
It's an inquiry.
Inquiry. What is going on for me? Even if that inquiry, if it is, let's say, anger, because that's a bloody great one. I love a little bit of anger conversation, right? Even if it is anger, you can ask the question in the anger. Right, you can still, you're in that emotion of being angry. Why am I so angry with myself? What's making me angry? And working out all of the different things that make you feel, when you're in that feeling, what is going on for me? Why am I so angry? And
me,
follow the thread, follow the breadcrumbs, right? Because that leads you there.
for me, it's a step before that. It's just acknowledging the anger and not trying to judge it, not trying to suppress it, if it's anger or if it's sadness or if it's fear. And I've spent a lot of the last few years in fear of various things. It's just actually acknowledging that that's how I feel without actually saying it's bad, because I think that the first place we go is, I'm not allowed to be angry. It's bad to be angry, or I'm not allowed to be fearful. I'm meant to be strong. And so my step is one step before that. It's just truly feeling the emotion without judgment and allowing that emotion to pass through my body. And if it means crying, I cry. If it means,
you had to learn that, right?
yeah.
You learned that in how did you learn that? How did you learn that?
Years of practice.
Yeah, but did you do it in a course? Did you do it with a therapist? Did you just know to do that? How did you know, like, that's sitting in it for you?
Great question, Julia, because now I'm actually writing a course teaching that. But how did I actually know that?
Yeah.
I think the way I know it now is that I feel it in my body. So it's a little bit about what you were talking about earlier, Julia. Different people connect with their emotions in different ways. I learnt that my body screams my emotions. I just wasn't tuned into the frequency. So I've learnt that when my body screams, I actively go into that part of my body to try and understand what's going on. Or conversely, I go into the emotion and then typically it's playing out in my body.
But how did you learn to do that? That's what I'm interested in. Did you learn it? Did you know it innately, and then you started to do it? Did you know it innately? Did a course?
I remembered it.
Right.
I remembered it, and part of it was the training that we all did together. But that was 15 years ago, that training. And I've only just remembered it in the last 2 years because I was going through, I'm a smart rat, right? You know, I'm a smart rat. And I've got all the processes and I've been working on myself for a long time. And then there came a point in my life where I had a major relationship breakup with my daughter that she basically told me one day she wanted nothing more to do with me. And I experienced physical pain. I'm about to I experienced physical pain like no other. And I had to actually go into that pain. I had to learn it again. So yeah, I was trained in it 15 years ago, but I hadn't realized that that was my superpower. That's the way I connect, right? I connect with, I can feel it in my body and I go into it and I'm told the emotion. I then connect with the emotion. But different people connect in different ways. That's just my path. Some people, you know, great question, Julie, because you're really probing. It's like some people just know. Other people come at it at a, you know, we all take information in from our guides or our inner, whatever we want to call it, in different ways. But mine is very much mind body.
Well, that's what makes you such a fantastic energetic healer, by the way. I have to say.
Thanks, Julia.
I mean, this is a really important question, I think, because we have to, we have to understand. We have to be careful with our language, not just as therapists and helpers, but I mean in day-to-day life. And so, this whole thing around what does sitting with it mean? What does it look like? How do I know if I'm even doing it? And leaning into it. Like, what the hell is that? Like, I think it's another level of conversation that spins off this whole conversation that we're having now, and maybe that's where we need to go next time. into some of these things, that I think that would be helpful.
They're always big subjects in the Wise Room.
Yeah, oh God, I know.
Huge.
So we need to be at that time, you know, where it's time for us to close the guide room down for now. And perhaps it's a good time for us to, you know, what's the takeaway that we're trying to share here through our own conversation? Like within me, I'm thinking, gosh, I've got to ring up my own helper tomorrow. I got to get in there. What's the takeaway here for each of us?
So my
Around doing your inner work, I mean, around the topic.
So my takeaway is purposefully choose to do the inner work, because the rewards are immense.
Yeah, for me it's the same. I love doing my inner work. I find out how awesome I am, and I'm just learning.
The emoji, I've got to do the reaction thing.
That's the biggest takeaway. Learn to really feel how awesome you are.
Yeah,
Inside.
I love that. Sister B?
Yeah, couldn't agree more with all of you guys. But what is sitting with me at the moment is the sitting with it. Because your inquiry is actually really interesting, because I've never thought about it that way. It does become something so, you know, it's like, yeah, sit with it, but yeah, you're right. How do you explain it actually? So I'm going to go and sit with it now on my balcony with my smudge and my rattler.
You did bring a homework topic.
Exactly. And my takeaway is even sometimes you're not sure. Sometimes it's a restlessness. It doesn't have to be a crisis. Sometimes it's just a feeling like there's kind of an elusiveness, which is to your point before, Deborah, about happiness. Yeah, it feels like something is just out of my reach. And that's why I originally started down the track. I can feel another subject bubbling up here. Like, why did you start down a spiritual practice pathway? Woo! Don't want to go there for the moment. But truthfully, it was something quite elusive. And I, to this day, cannot name it. And to this day, I still have that unsatisfied, which still drives my inner work. You know, and so I would say, even if it's those vague feelings are actually the knock on the door. And, you know, next time you may want to join us if we go into this topic of sitting in and sitting with, because if there's someone or something knocking at the door, then the next step is to go, well, hang on, what's the knock? Or even, what's the door?
Yeah.
And if you don't answer the door on the let me tell you, a semi-trailer comes through.
Exactly.
Then you do the work.
Yeah.
I think also,
so I guess what we're all saying, pardon?
For anything that keeps you small as well, anything that is trying to keep you small within you, that's always a good watcher for me as well. I like to keep myself small at times, and that's always a big alarm bell for me.
We also got another question come in on Facebook, which is there a podcast, girls? I really enjoyed this.
Oh, well, actually, funny you should ask that. It's still in the studio at the moment. It's called Tea with the Beryls, where we have these kinds of conversations over a cup of tea. All right, everybody, I think it's time for us to draw the guide room to a close. I want to thank everybody who's engaging with the guide room. These are the conversations that we have all of the time when we're together, and I'm sure that they're the conversations, you know, some people, some inside voices, and the conversations that often you'd like to have with some of your friends, but you maybe don't have that that group around you all the confidence. So the guide room is the place that you can have those conversations with us. And we'd love it if you'd actually come into the Zoom room with us and be here live. Does anyone have any last moment things they'd like to share before we close off? No. I just would like to share with you, you can work with the guides. There's 4 of them here. There's a 5th guide who's actually off guiding at the moment. You can find us at, oh, I don't know if I can get it up. Oh, I can't. Oh, there we go. No, I can't get it up quickly enough.
I got mine. Do you want me to share?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Are you sharing?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, it's not letting me share.
Okay.
That wasn't easy, was it?
All right, well, let me share. Here we are. Oh gosh, all my courses are open. So as you can see, you go to www.spiritualhealingcourses.com. You go to the Learn tab and you'll see the Wise Guides there. You simply click on the Wise Guides, tells you a little bit about them, and then you can scroll through and find the guide that you'd like to work with. There's a booking button for each guide, so you simply press the booking button and make a time with them. Thank you once again for joining us today. We'll see you again next time in the guide room. Ahui ho.